In this lesson, we're going to talk about melody, songwriting, but really melody, and what makes melody work or not work. Once again, it's simplicity and repetition. It happened to you before, I'm sure. You're driving down the road and you hear the latest Britney Spears, and you don't like Britney Spears, but maybe you do. But if you don't, the next day you still hear that song because you've heard it over and over. And that's something to remember. That's a lesson that you should remember, because the more you hear something, the more you're going to recognize it, and the human ear loves to recognize things. And that's what makes you buy a record that you thought you would never buy, because you heard that so many times. You can see that in kids' songs too. You know, you've heard lullabies over and over and over, and kids memorize that because they hear it over and over, and it's repetition that makes something appealing to the ear. So we're going to try to remember that as we were taking a look at several examples, and as we're looking at how to write a catchy melody. Again, don't feel that you need to know all these scales and all this technique in order to write something catchy. You really don't. I believe that most of the melodies that you're going to come out with are already inside of you. Now, it's true that learning new scales, new material is going to maybe influence you to write something a little different. And it's also going to help you maybe get outside of a situation where you feel stuck. But for the most part, I think all those melodies are already inside of you. And you can take a look at how to extract those melodies from within and use this, once again, as an instrument. Just like a poet would use a pen to write ideas down, we're going to use this to convey the ideas that are inside of you. So that's what we're going to take a look at. Now, without getting too much into theory, I just want to talk a little bit about strong notes, and I don't want to say weak notes, but notes that are maybe not stable. There's some notes that are very stable, that you can rest on, and that are going to sound fulfilled, that are going to fulfill the listener pretty much. Those notes are found in the chord. So if I have a chord progression and I write my melody making sure to follow all the notes that are found in my chord, the melody is going to be a strong melody because it's going to follow the chords. Now, if you just have a melody that follows those chords, it might not be that interesting. You need some other notes, some passing notes, and those notes are, I call these notes unstable. So if you land on these notes, it might not create the right effect. You know, if I land on, let's say, a ninth, for example, I've got a major G major chord, and I land on a ninth, it kind of opens things up, and it's a little bit unstable. It's still very nice. I like to use that, but we're going to talk about strong notes, notes that are found in the arpeggio or the chord that you're dealing with. And usually it's going to be root, third, fifth, seventh, and all the other notes are kind of embellishment notes. That being said, I don't want you to use that principle when we're going to work on the following examples. This was just said so that if you're in a situation where you feel stuck and you're not sure what am I going to do, then take a look at the strong notes and the passing tone notes, the enrichments, and try to figure out something. But the following exercise, all you need is an ear and your guitar and a voice, although you don't need to sing in pitch, but we're going to check that out in the next scene. Okay, so how can we write strong melodies without knowing much about theory? Very easy. You're going to play the chords or the riff, or even listen to it. That's even better. If you can record the chords and then put your guitar aside and listen to it, that's going to help you avoid the trap of limiting yourself to this fretboard. As I said before, there's a lot of times when us guitar players feel that we have to stick to the scales and the patterns that we've learned, and then our music sounds very robotic, very just unlively. You know, we like to do those kind of scales. Unfortunately, the audience doesn't always like it, and it can be quite boring and just like an athlete just doing exercises. but we want to really convey emotions. So in order to avoid the trap of being stuck with these shapes and patterns, we're going to set the guitar aside, listen to the backing track or the song that you wrote, and just listen. Steve Vai calls this the inner ear, and all that he means is that within you there's some melodies that you can almost hear inside. I know it's kind of wacky like that, but it's true. That's what a singer does automatically. If a singer hears you play a chord progression, he's just going na 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 na, you know, whatever, and that's how great melodies come. And I think that's a lesson that we should apply to our playing. So we're going to take a practical example in the next section made of 2 chords. Once again, you don't need a lot of chords to make something catchy. G and A. Those are the 2 chords, and we're going to make them even simpler than that. We're going to play G5, which is a power chord, 2 notes, a root, and a 5th. So we're going to use G, G5, and A5. That's all we're going to use. And then we're going to see what we can write, what we can come up with in the next scene. Okay, so we've got a very simple chord progression, 2 chords, A5, G5. Let's listen to it. I'm going to play it extremely basic. And once again, you have a backing track underneath with this chord progression, and that's going to be used in the next section. But let's take a listen. Can't be easier than that. And then G. And then A. Now, if I were to write a song, I would probably not play those chords like that. I would go back to the previous lesson, make something more interesting. But those are the chords. And then we're just going to listen and try to sing something over it. And I'm not a great singer, but if you can hear it in your head, if you can hear it in pitch, you don't need to sing it in pitch because your guitar is tuned correctly. But let's see what we can come up with that. Super simple, almost cheesy. Well, actually completely cheesy, but that's what came out naturally. Now it's time to try to reproduce that on the guitar. So it's going to sound better because it's going to be in tune, and your guitar players, not singers. Maybe you are, but I'm not. So it's going to sound better that way. So let's take a look at the melody that we sung and apply it to our instrument. So hopefully when you're doing this kind of exercise, you have a catchy melody. And in order to know if it's catchy, if you can sing it 3-4 times in a row, then you've got something. So I played around with that, and the melody that I sang earlier sounds kind of like this. Okay, that's not bad. Right now I'm just trying to find the notes. Now, if you're trying to find the notes, it might look like this. The exercise might look like this. Ba, 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 ba. You might try to find things around a little bit. That's okay. I don't want you to be tied to a scale position. So you might play that note here, but you can also find it here. It doesn't matter. We're trying to find the right notes for now. Once we have the right notes, we're going to try to make it more appealing and fit it really to the instrument. But for now, we're just looking at the notes. Okay, and then my song went something like this. Something like that. So once you have the main melody, once again, how do we find that melody? Not with scales or anything like that, just by singing over it. We're going to try to make it more appealing to the guitar. And there's a lot of different techniques that we can use for that. And depending on your level, the more technique you have, the more specific you can be when you're trying to make this work on the guitar. That's why it's important to learn new licks, new techniques, because they're going to make a melody more appealing. I could play the same melody like this. You know, by embellishing a little bit, changing a few notes, vibrating a note, bending a note. All this is adapting the melody to the instrument. And then you can maybe try to play the same melody somewhere else. It's going to sound a little different, and it's going to maybe be more comfortable for you. So try to adapt the melody that you have on your instrument. That's very important. And again, you have your backing track underneath. Try to play that melody as it's written. Try to anticipate the sound of the notes and adapt it to your instrument by experimenting with several bends, slides, legato. We're going to get into legato later. Any technique that you might have worked on before. And that's for that example here. In the following scene, I'm going to give you some assignments to go a little further. Let's check them out. The previous melody was in the key of A minor, pentatonic, because you might not know this, and that's okay, because I asked you to really sing the melody from hearing the chords. But if we looked at the notes that we sang, they're all in A minor pentatonic. There's 3 backing tracks for you, the same exact backing tracks that we worked on previously, because I want to really develop a strong connection between what you hear, what you heard, and what you're going to work on. We're going to build on those things. Those backing tracks are in the key of G minor pentatonic, A minor pentatonic, and E minor pentatonic. The same riffs that we came up with in the previous lesson. I'd like you to listen and really try to do that. Set your guitar aside. Don't just play as you're listening or try to find the melody on your guitar. Don't do that. Just sing over it. No matter your level of singing, it doesn't matter. Until you find something. You might find it useful to come up with simple lyrics. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Or just pick a book and read from the book and try to sing what you're reading over the backing track. You're going to get some ideas after a while. Those ideas, again, if you can remember that idea after the song is done, you probably have something very catchy. Don't need to be complex at all. Simplicity works, and it's embellishing those very simple melodic ideas that are going to make something great and beautiful, just like Satriani. Listen to Satriani's recordings, see how this concept can work over his material, and I think you'll find that that lesson is very important in order to write something catchy and interesting. Practice well.